for a little while now, and just jumped right in from her role on the Anchorage Assembly into the acting mayor role. And Mayor Quinn-Davidson, our women in leadership, empowerment, and advancement, really thought it would be wonderful to hear from you and just to hear your story and any thoughts that you have on leadership that you want to share with us. And then we have a lot of great questions that were submitted ahead of time, and then we can just kind of go into some open dialogue and Q&A.
That sounds great. And I love the questions. I love the idea of having a conversation with you guys. Katie and I have some comments that I can give, and then I think we could just move into that discussion. It may be your culture for no one to show their faces, but would you mind just for a second, since I'm speaking to about 40 dots, if people could just show their faces and we could say hi and it would feel less formal and more conversational? Hi.
Hi.
Great. Hi, Michael. Well, I got 3 or 4 of you. It's not a great percentage.
Great.
By the end of this, you'll know us all.
I hope so. Yeah, it's a lot of new faces for me. Can you tell me a little bit, Heather, about this group and who you all are and why you're here and how often you meet and that sort of thing? Oh, you're muted, Heather.
Thank you for letting me know. Okay, so I will start and then I'll welcome any of the WLEAD team members to jump in. But the WLEAD group was created a number of years ago at ALSK Communications with a focus to really empower women in leadership at our company, and to really try to create a forum to encourage women to take on leadership roles, create an environment where they can feel like they can take on new opportunities and be promoted within the company. And since the group started, we've been doing a monthly series where we just talk with different leaders in the community. And it's an opportunity to learn from leaders and to build relationships inside and outside the company. And we invite all employees to participate. There's a core group that is on the WLEAD committee, and they organize all of this. We have a really wonderful mentorship program in the company now where we have formal mentee and mentor relationships that the WLEAD team kind of creates the program. So that's kind of in a nutshell what it is. And I'll, if anybody else from WLEAD wants to add to that, you're welcome to.
Yeah, hey, here's Marie. I'm running the WLEAD program right now. And thanks for that introduction, Heather. I'll just add to that yeah, we really are working on kind of culture as a whole. So wanting to make sure ACS is a place where everyone likes to come to work and, you know, they say play, but work and play and have a good time at their job. So through mentorship and building those relationships.
Great. Thanks, Marie. Great. Well, Heather, I could start off just with some comments and then we could move into questions and more of a discussion if that sounds good.
Yep, that's perfect.
Well, I'm glad you invited me. It's really an honor that you thought of me. So thanks for having me here. And really one of my favorite parts of this job is getting to do this, is meeting new groups of people I don't know and getting to hear from you and learn. And so I'm just excited to be here. You know, as Katie and I were talking through preparing for this, a couple weeks ago, I was interviewed by Jasmine Smith, who's a local community leader, and she asked me who my mentors were, being a woman in a leadership role and who I look to. And, you know, I just found myself sort of not knowing the answer to that question, and it seemed like it should be an easy one. And I think the reason is that there are so many incredible, you know, smart, strong, compassionate women in my life. But as with many of the roles, I think that women and people of color find themselves in, the mayor of Anchorage is a role that's historically been held by men, right? So when I took this, position, I think it took a little bit of imagination. And one of the things I really like this quote, which is that you can be it if you can see it. And I think that for women right now, that it's changing. Women are starting to see themselves where they could be, whereas before there were so few examples. And I think that that's the case with this position as well. But it's helped, to be surrounded by many incredible women, and personally, professionally. And one of the things I've been thinking about after Women's History Month in March is just how many women we have serving in some of our top leadership positions. So I've been working really closely with the Colonel Kirsten Aguilar of JBEAR. She is just a wonderful person. If any of you know her, get a chance to work with her. Obviously, the school district superintendent, Dina Bishop. Our fire chief is a woman, our municipal manager, whom I appointed when I first started as a woman, our health department director. And so we have a lot of female leadership at the municipality, and I'm really proud of that. I think both because they're doing a great job, irrespective of sex or gender, but also because they're a role model for other kids, sort of back to that, if you can see it, you can be it idea. I think that seeing all these women in those places and interacting with them as leaders has really helped me put a little more trust in my own leadership style. And I think it's interesting walking into a job like this with staff who exist and a team you didn't necessarily pick, and they're amazing, but knowing that they worked for someone very different before. And obviously Ethan and I have a lot of policy overlap, but I think in personality and style are incredibly different. And having all these strong women around me, I think has really emboldened me to bring my own style. And I really focused on listening and collaborating and trying to make decisions that people have a vested interest in. And Ethan probably did that too. I haven't, I wasn't around then, so I'm not comparing me to him, but I think having all these women around has allowed me to be myself and to bring my leadership style. I think that, I guess I want to talk a little bit just about Anchorage and where we are right now and what I see happening over the next few months. And then we could kind of get back to the leadership idea. The promise of summer and warmer weather and spending time, with friends and family gives me a lot of hope. I hope that it also does that for you. And I think particularly vaccines are what are really driving this hope for me. And I want to make sure to put in a plug that if you yourself have not been vaccinated yet, please, please do. It is truly our ticket to getting life back to normal until we have, and there are different, I think, opinions about what that percentage is, but until we get there, anywhere from 65 to 85%, we're going to keep having, I was just talking with our epidemiologist this morning, and she described it as whack-a-mole. You're just going to keep having these variants and things pop up and keep having people get some form of COVID. And that's going to impact our economy. It impacts commerce. It impacts tourism. Right now we're talking with, Visit Anchorage or other groups who are like, oh my God, we need a mask. We need to keep the mask mandate, and we need to make sure cases are low. Like, our ability to bounce back and to have the economic recovery we want is dependent on getting vaccinated. So to the extent you can spread the word, if you want to do a clinic in your workplace, anything you want, let us know, because that it's really the biggest piece right now to getting back to where we were. So obviously we spent a ton of our time working on COVID related things, but even as we've done that, we've also been working hard to think about economic recovery and what does growth look like beyond the pandemic. We've done a lot of focus on relief dollars, obviously the first CARES Act package. Now we're looking at the American Rescue Plan and what gaps there are. We're really pleased that the federal government passed this massive package that really will mostly make restaurants whole and bars, which is a huge, element to our community that was really struggling, along with a bunch of other things. So we're really pleased about that. We've also done things locally that I think beyond waiving fees and doing the aid package, we've also really focused on internal changes that can make business stronger. We've created, for instance, a couple property tax incentives, downtown incentive that encourages housing development downtown. Also, more recently, a tax incentive, and I think both of them are 12-year, no property tax for 12 years. If you build, I think for downtown, you have to build 4 more units than before, either on a remodel or a new building. But the second one is a transit corridor development incentive. So really trying to get housing to the right spots that really feed into our transit goals as well. We've been working, we've been the leader on trying to deal with the impacts of climate change, sort of in absence of the state having much of a role there. You probably saw on the bond that we added some solar panels. A lot of these climate solutions are good for the environment, but also save money long term if you make the investment up front. So we've been really proud to be working on that and putting those efforts forward. And another thing that's been important to me is equity. I think sort of to your point and your prompt for today about making sure that all of the beauty and diversity and richness in our community is represented in the places we all are, and that includes muni government. And I think there's a couple ways I've been focusing on that. One is to really ask the question when I'm in the room, is this who I should be talking with right now? And whose voice am I not hearing? And I'll say that one thing that has been, probably shouldn't be surprising to me, but to some extent has been in coming into this role, is that there are really set communication lines between people who frequently communicate with the mayor and who, have the mayor, know the mayor's schedule, know how to, mayor's scheduler, know how to get in touch with the mayor, expect to meet with the mayor regularly. And then there are entire communities who, don't do that at all. And I'm sure you're not surprised to learn that it tends to be more powerful, more white, more male representatives of our community who are very accustomed to having that voice and that influence. And so I've been trying to be very intentional about taking meetings and who I'm meeting with, and involving not new because they've been there, but sort of newly involving members of our community whose voices have not been as heard. And I'm trying to, in the short time I have, establish that as a norm and, set up these meetings. And, the new mayor comes in, we meet quarterly with the, Hmong community or with the Korean community, talk about how COVID is impacting them, more so than in this other realm. Like, I think those norms are important, and that's something that we hope I can do in my short time. We're also really excited to bring on a chief equity officer. We're sort of in the final stages of that, expect to have someone on by the end of the month. And that person will look both internally about, looking at sort of muni policies, procedures, structures, the institution of the muni, how it contributes or doesn't to meeting our equity goals, and then also working with the assembly on potential code changes. And then I think also partnering externally with the community to make sure we're engaging with the right people and, again, hearing from the right people. So I think that's kind of a good intro. If you wanted to go into questions or have anything you want to respond to, that would be great.
That was great. Thank you, Mayor Quinn-Davidson. I really love the quote that you shared, that if you can see it, you can be it. I think that's, it's so simply put and also so true, and really cool to hear what you're doing with thinking about different stakeholder groups and bringing in groups who may not feel like they could even ask the mayor for a regular meeting. I think that that's a huge shift and really positive. So we have some really great prepared questions that were sent in ahead of time. Before we dive into those, are there any questions that you all want to ask or just thoughts you want to share? All right, well, we'll get started. We have a great list here. So Mayor Quinn-Davidson, we'd love to hear a little more about your career story and what drew you into politics and how you've sort of gotten to where you are today.
Sure. It's probably not a very traditional story. I'm from the middle of nowhere. I'm from a tiny rural town in Northern California. My mom's a cook. My dad was a carpenter. I identify very much with sort of working class values. And I think that probably looking forward has helped me be open to hearing from other people and understand some of the struggles. I think we can only know what we experience ourselves, and it's really hard to understand other people's points of views. But having been someone who, was waiting to get school closed because we didn't have money, or trying to navigate sort of financial issues in a small town with a tight-knit community, I think made me both value community and how we lift each other up, but also try to listen and not see things from my point of view all the time, and understand that people's struggles are different. I went to school undergrad. I was really interested in environmental stuff, in sort of science, and but also in sort of land use policy, and like, why were things being built the way they were? What triggered what requirements, and did it make sense that we did it that way? And shouldn't we rethink, just sort of going through all these things you're doing as an undergrad, like, why is the world the way it is? And does it make sense that it's that way? And I remember I didn't know any lawyers. We didn't have a single lawyer in my town, and my parents didn't, in our town, the rich kids were teachers, the teachers' kids, because they had health insurance. Like, that is sort of the extent of what are the demographics in our town. And so I think I remember in college, doing pretty well and going, what could I do where I sort of try to decide what the rules are and make sure the rules make sense for everyone? And people said, you should go to law school. But I didn't know anything about law school. I'd never heard of law review. If any of you are lawyers, I arrived to law school and had no idea what all the rules were. And all the other kids knew the rules, and their parents were doctors or judges or professors. And to me, that was I've lived in many different countries and had a lot of different cultural experiences. And I think that was the single biggest culture shock I've ever experienced, is going to law school and realizing, wow, feeling like I didn't belong. And that, it was, what was it, 20 years ago almost now. And so I guess 17 years ago, I went to law school. So back then we were not talking about class a lot. I remember talking a lot about race. And so I remember thinking, and half the class was female. So, theoretically there's no gender issue. It's even. I remember talking to a classmate of mine, a male, saying, I just feel like I don't belong, like something different about my family, but I'm white. And so I like just not knowing how to fit. And I think we've learned so much in the last 20 years about how real that is, and how we all bring these different experiences and limits and fears. And anyway, I'm going on and on, but I basically just loved Alaska, moved up here. I didn't want to be a regular lawyer. It felt a little boring. I wanted to do something where I got to change the rules and push the limits. And that's why I'm here, I guess.
That's really cool to hear that was your goal and kind of what drove you, and you're doing it. You really are in a position, whether as an assembly member or as mayor, to implement change and to affect the rules. That's really cool. So the next question is about leadership. How do you define leadership, and what characteristics will make or break a leader?
I've been thinking a lot about that, and I'm sure you all have too, as we've been witnessing the election, and just what people are saying and how people campaign, and what their vision is they're putting out there. I think it's a very male thing to say, I have all the answers, and not all. I mean, I don't want to malign the men on this call or suggest that some women aren't this way, but I think it's a very sort of, if you're a politician and you're sort of the standard politician, this is how you answer the questions. And I think the question a lot is like, I have all the ideas on housing policy, or I'm going to fix crime, or I'm going to do this. And I think that's just not at all what being a leader is really about. And so it's this interesting thing where I feel like we're all faking it, that we say that we know what the answer is, and that we're some magical creature who's going to roll in there on our own, overseeing 3,000 employees and make all these changes. And I think that what you need is you need to have, you need to be driven by some amount of principle that shows you where to go. And for me, I think it's like caring about what other people are experiencing and trying to be open to the fact that everything's not black and white. But in the details, it's trusting staff, and it's collaborating, and it's partnering with community groups, and it's listening. Like, what I go to so many things, people just want me to listen to them. That's what they want. They want me to hear them and be respectful and understand. And I think there's this great disconnect between what the sort of standard politician is doing and what the average person wants. And so anyway, I've thought a lot about that in this role, because externally you're sort of playing that part, but when you're really working with people, internal or external, it's much more collaborative and much more of a listening and learning exercise, I think, for me.
That's great. Thank you. And I think the next question is really related to that, which is how do you build and unify your team?
Well, Katie's here and she's the communications director, so she might have some thoughts too. But I think that we have to laugh. We have to have fun. It's been a really hard period of time for all of us, year or so, and some really difficult decisions in this role. And if we don't have fun with it as much as we can while being respectful of everything everyone's going through, we're not going to make it. So we laugh a lot. We tease each other. We respect each other. I think that the sort of, again, this like top down, and this is a very top down environment. When I got here, everyone's like, Mayor, you tell us, what do you want to do? It's like, well, what do you think we should do? And it's an interesting environment. It's very top heavy. And I don't think that I'm not always the person most informed, right? Like Katie might have worked on something extensively and then come to me for a decision. Of course, I want to hear what she has to say about it, but I want to hear, I mean, of course she wants to hear what I have to say, but I want to hear what she has to say. And I think that give and take makes decisions just a whole lot better. And it makes you understand why you're doing it. I think that being authentic is key. I think that a trap that a lot of us fall into is if you're going to be in a certain position, whether it's mayor or assembly member or communications director or whatever you're supposed to be, that you have to be a certain way and that's what people like. And my experience in my life, and I'd love to hear what the rest of you on this call think, but is that being yourself, so long as yourself is not a total jerk, is really what people want. They want to connect with you and understand you, and they'll be a lot more gracious and forgiving if they think you're real and that you're struggling there right alongside them. So I think that's been a big part of, I don't know, Katie, if you have anything to offer, but our success as a team is just getting through it together and really behaving like a team.
Yeah, we have a comment that says so true. I totally agree. And actually, I feel like it's a really cool time to be working at any level, whether you're a leader or you're a frontline person. And especially for me in a communications field, Katie, I don't know if you feel the same way. And when you're a leader, you're communicating all the time. And that authenticity is so valuable, and that's what people want. And so it's really positive, I think, to right now, like in our time, that's what people want. And we see when people aren't authentic or they're, on the extreme end of it, unethical, it's called out, and that's good. Should be.
And I think it's part of breaking down all these like images of, it's like a politician should be this way, and it should be this, 55-year-old guy, and he should wear a suit, and he should tell us what his vision is, and he should, it's like, that's all okay, and none of those are bad, but there are so many different forms of leadership and so many different people, and if we can't let go of that sort of really structured image, we're not going to bring in new people. Like, we just have to be okay with people bringing what they bring, and I think we're better off that way.
I think so too. And I think, Heather, to your point, I think my job as a communicator is made more fun and meaningful, I think, working with a mayor and a team that values that kind of authenticity. We're all people, we're trying to do the right thing, and we're committed to doing that with integrity, but also just keeping in mind that kind of connection with people is at the center of that. And so as a communicator especially, that's something I value a lot. Yeah.
So I'm going to go into another question, which is who influences you? You know, are there authors or you know, people in your life that we all could also learn from that inspire you?
That's a good question. I was just going off track thinking, God, I wish I could read books right now. Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, I've taken a little break from hobbies, I would say. My hobby is to hang out in this bedroom with my dogs next to me and talk to all of you. But, you know, one thing that I did this interview a couple months ago, and I'm so glad I did, because they asked to explore like a piece of art or something. I think it was an APRN thing, but explore a piece of art or something that brings you joy. And it made me realize how I love music. I'm a big music person, and I had sort of gotten away from, you know, it takes a little work to like find new bands and figure out what's out there. And with no live music and not traveling to see any live music, that had sort of vanished. But I think I realized this missing hole. And so I've really been trying to, even in the morning while I'm getting ready, you know, listening to music, and because it just makes you feel good, right? Like, I feel like music just speaks to your soul in a way that like work can't always, even if it's fulfilling. And yeah, so I've been trying to do that. My favorite artist of all time is Brandi Carlile. She is a singer, not Belinda, not to be confused with Belinda Carlisle. She is a singer who lives outside of Seattle. She sings sort of like indie, folk, country. I think I love both her music and probably her life. We have a similar sort of experience. She's my age. She's married to a woman. She grew up really poor. She grew up kind of in a hick family, which I say lovingly because I did as well. You know, very, and then found out she was gay and tried to process that. And then, you know, went on to become this famous singer and deal with all of that. And I just love her music, and I love her humility. And anyway, I often listen to her.
That's great. I love her too. In fact, so we will, I think this is within the rules, but you can tell me if it's not. We will send you her new book that just came out.
Oh, really? You have it?
Yeah, as a thank you.
I love that.
Yeah, because I think it's under the dollar amount. And
it should be. I think it's 50.
When you're no longer acting mayor, you might end up having time to read again. So it'll be perfect.
I will look forward to it. I think it was just released 2 days ago. So you guys are in on great. Amazing. Katie knows how excited I am. There's a lot of talk about Brandi Carlile on our staff.
I think she's great too. Okay, so a few other questions kind of related to your job, and I think this could be at any point in your career. What are some successes that you've had, and what are some tough decisions that you've had to make?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think the success piece, sort of the obvious, would be surviving this crazy time. And I think making decisions that, even though they were tough, particularly the closing indoor dining and putting some pretty strict restrictions in December, I think put us on the path to have the summer we want and to be where we are now. Had we not done that, we'd be in a really different position. And we've seen, you know, higher rates in communities that haven't made those sorts of tough calls. You know, the interesting thing, when I first came into this role, I really had this belief, even having been on the assembly, and it shows how important communications is and making sure assembly members understand it too, but that it was really like public health versus the economy. So if we, if we do these restrictions, they make sense for public health, but they hurt the economy. What we learned as I started, and again, it's sort of the bringing in, you know, the press conferences, we started inviting economists, we started inviting restaurant owners, we started inviting, you know, Anchorage Downtown Partnership. Like, let's invite all of the people who are touched by these decisions and hear what they have to say. And it became very apparent that a lot of business leaders, they didn't want those restrictions necessarily, but they knew that it would end up being better. And so it was this weighing of, oh, do we have to do it now? But yeah, we know we have to do it. Like, what are we otherwise? I mean, people were starting to shut down restaurants at Kincaid Grill, which is my favorite restaurant in town. You know, they had someone sick there. They had to close down for 2 weeks. It was just getting pretty bad. And, you know, we work with this economist, Dr. Barry at UA or University of Alaska, and he has done a lot of research on the economy during pandemics. And he'll say that, you know, if there's about a 60% reduction in the economy, say in a certain period of restrictions, only about 12% of the reduction in commerce will be due to the restrictions. The rest will be people, well, other things, right? So people getting sick and they don't want to go out, people not wanting to go out because they're worried they'll get sick, you know, businesses being shut down because people have to quarantine, all of those things. And so we've just really been trying to hammer that message that it is not public health versus the economy. It is, how do we control public health numbers to a reasonable place that allows our economy to get through this? And I think that that shift is important. I can't remember what you asked me, but I got off on a tangent there. But in terms of hard decisions, I think those decisions sort of ostensibly feel very hard, right? Shutting down indoor dining, whatever the decision is. But again, back to the listening thing, once I listened, you know, and learned from economists and from even business owners, and, you know, there was a lot of dialogue there. So I would be talking, you know, with the hospitality retailers head, or with restaurant owners, or with Lee Ellis from the Brewers Guild, or with Sarah Oates from Char, saying like, what can you bear and when are you bringing in money, and what's your pattern look like? Like, how is this going to affect you? And I think because I did that, I mean, people weren't happy that that happened, but if you read the news, because we were of course paying a lot of attention to this in December, it wasn't nasty. It wasn't us versus them. It was, this is really hard on us right now. And it was. So I think that that collaboration and really just listening paid off.
Thank you. So related to that is, what has it been like for you leading Anchorage through the pandemic and really through a crisis? And then where do you see Anchorage going in the next year?
It's been both hard and at times impossible feeling. It's impossible to please everyone. People always think, some people always think you're, you know, the devil incarnate and all of those things. So that is sort of just an interesting thing in this sort of role. At the same time, you'll get amazing feedback and people who come up to me crying and say, like, I feel like you saved our city. And like, you know, my mom who has to work a job, who can't be remote, is safer because of you. Thank you. Like, I mean, it just sort of runs the gamut. And I think that this team, working with Katie, working with Jason, who's my chief of staff and just an incredible guy, and Claire and others, has made it all worth it. And they're every much as, you know, just as much as dedicated to do this work as I am. And if they weren't, it would be impossible. And I mean, Katie, what time were you working till last night? 11? It's normal. Like we're all emailing each other at 9:30 at night. It's not healthy, but it's what we're doing because we need to get the city through this. It's not sustainable. But we all know that we have this time to work our butts off and to do everything we can to get Anchorage out of this. And we're all dedicated. And that is so fulfilling, right? To see people give themselves like that. In terms of where we're going the next year, I mean, I think we're going to just have this constant sort of tug and, you know, push and pull between, oh, we feel better, we're doing great, we have a bunch of people vaccinated, let's go back to normal. It's like, you know, right now, Katie, what is it? We're about 30% fully vaccinated or something ish. So it feels like, oh my God, Anchorage, Alaska, we're doing a great job. And we are, but it just takes a while. And so that, I think people are losing they're burning out, right? Everyone's sick of wearing a mask. I don't want to wear a mask. Like, no one wants to. It's a pain in the ass. And so we just need to keep up this push for vaccinations, because it's really, really going to get us there. And we need to be thinking about long term, how we're both putting money into the economy now. What are we doing with the Rescue Act money? What are we doing to change the muni that should have been done anyway? You know, what are we doing at development services? What are we doing at planning to get rid of some of the bureaucracy that does exist and that is annoying for Katie and me as it is for others trying to navigate that and fix it? So how do we do that? And one thing, Katie and Claire Pywell, who's not on the call, but is a really great part of our team, what we're working on is sort of outlining a framework for that, so that when the new mayor comes in, we've done a bunch of research saying these are the things we think you could work on. And, irrespective of who it is, these are things that would really help to keep up this process of recovery. And I think that us doing that will help the mayor really focus on that, which will obviously be the focus of the next year. Do you mind, Heather, if I read these questions?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
absolutely. Just going to go to those next. So would you consider running for mayor or any other office?
I don't know. I really don't know. My wife and I talk about this all the time, and it's just like, right now it feels I'm very tired. And that was part of the reason I definitely was asked to run for this time. And I felt two things. One was, I told the people of Anchorage that I was going to get them through this, and that I was going to have my whole heart and soul focused on that. And I felt it would be disingenuous to also be campaigning and try to sort of benefit off of me being in that position, when the reason I was in that position was to do the right job for the next 8 months. So I felt like that wasn't the right thing. But it's also an incredibly exhausting job. I mean, we work, every day of the week, and you can't really go on vacation. And, you always have to be in cell range. It's like many other jobs, but then times 10. It's just not, even being on the assembly, I could go, backpacking for the weekend, and I went to a cabin for the weekend. I have an inReach. Jason knows how to get a hold of me. It's just a whole deal. It's not, it's a hard life to live. And I think that unless there's pros and cons. It's been hard for me because I haven't seen a lot of the pros in the sort of classic kind of perk way of being a mayor, right? Like, people love being the mayor because they get to go to events and they get to meet all these people and they get to see new things and, go to whatever event it is and see an art project, or, travel to meet other mayors, or go to DC and talk with folks there. I haven't done any of that stuff, right? I like to joke, I sit in this guest room, 12 to 14 hours a day. With my sweats on the bottom. I mean, that's like what being a mayor is like in 2021. So I think my view of this is really different than, like, my role has been really different than your average mayor. But yeah, maybe, Odell, maybe I would. I think I need a little break. Break being going back to the assembly to think through it. I think I will say, I'm sorry, I'm kind of rambling, but I will say that this job, it's hard to find a job that's this fulfilling, right? I mean, it's like, where else can you do this kind of thing? And can you make an impact on people's lives and push staff to do it in a really positive way and hear their great ideas and just feel like, wow, we're doing right by Anchorage? That's a pretty surreal feeling, honestly. So
yeah.
I think,
well, thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you for
I mean, it's really tremendous, and you're doing a really great job. And I think you have a lot of people who are in your corner and appreciate you. So I think we have time for maybe a couple more questions. I see that Gary has a question, and he's wondering.
Good question, Gary. I don't know. I don't know. Gosh, we have a problem in our culture, don't we, about facts and information. So we've just been really trying to share as much as we can about what's really out there. I think it's normal for people to be scared about sort of human nature, right? Something that's new and that they don't fully understand. And so I think our job is to plug in where the don't fully understand or where there's holes, plug that with really good information. And Katie will say, been pushing these guys. It's like, okay, less about where you can get vaccinated. I think people who want to get vaccinated know how to figure that out. More about why. And I think that economic piece is big. Like, this isn't just about you, it's about your community. Like, do you want to do, COVID whack-a-mole for 3 years? No. Do you want to be able to go, to a restaurant and not have to wear a mask? Do you want to be able to go, while you're walking in or whatever? Do you want to go to the PAC and watch performances? Like, do you want to do all these things you love? Because, hey, guess what? If you want to, we have to get vaccinated. That's the way it works. And so we've just been really trying to show those benefits, because I hope that might tip enough people who are like, I don't need to get vaccinated. I'm young. I'm not going to die from COVID. There's fewer cases, to, oh, well, I guess I'll do it then. So yeah, still work in progress.
So why don't we end with a question that is, it may not be applicable like right in this moment, but how do you take care of yourself to be a great leader? So maybe not during a crisis, but kind of otherwise, what do you do?
Yeah, that's been hard, sort of back to how do you not work all the time when it's something this important? I'm sure you guys struggle with this, right? Like, how do you put your work down and say it's more important to go on a walk with my dogs or my wife, or it's more important for me to help with dinner? Like, those are hard. I mean, it's hard, right? It's actually literally not more important. So but I have to take that time or else I'll work forever. So how do I pull myself away? I think getting away, we've done a couple weekends where we went away and I was either in cell range or gave my NReach, and that's helpful because I'm not at a computer. And so I can't just say, oh yeah, I'll review that really quickly, I'll do this or that. I'm still checking my email, but at least I think getting away from your space where you are, like working so much, for me really helps me remember the world is big and there's a lot out there, and I don't sweat the small stuff and we'll get through it. But I think it's really hard not to overwork and to make space for yourself. I mean, how do you guys do it? Give me some tips.
Well, I do think that when you're you are in a crisis and you're in this extended crisis. And I think it's really, really challenging for you and your team. Because I feel the same way. I know when the pandemic hit, our company was in crisis mode and we all worked insane hours as well. And I was good with that. I personally felt like I have people helping me with my son and making meals, and I didn't have to worry about it. I could work whatever hours, and that's what I wanted to do. And I think there's a time when it's too much and you have to find balance. And for me, I definitely do a lot of outdoor activities. The fresh air and being in nature is like my channel changer, my lifeline. But I think it's definitely difficult right now.
And to that point, in November, I was like getting out on the fat bike and that was great. And then I got COVID, and I haven't talked a lot about this because people don't generally ask, but I've experienced long COVID symptoms, and I've been having, to this day, earlier today, I was having this really bad headache and get kind of dizzy and extreme fatigue. So I just haven't, until the last 3 weeks or so, I hadn't really been exercising regularly. And, it took me a month or more to be able to walk. Like, it was, I was inside working all the time, but I couldn't physically do things. And that really gives you a relief, right? Like that, for so many of us, like being outside or exercising kind of takes you away from the stress. And so I think that's been hard for me too, just finding ways to get away from it without having the same physical strength.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we hope that when you're able to, when you move on and transition and there's a new mayor, that you have time to get back out there. I hope I see you on the trails again this summer.
Yeah, I know. We always see each other flat top, wherever it is. Heather's usually running up the hill, and I'm
not true.
Walking.
Not true. Well, thank you so much for spending an hour with us. We really appreciate it. We know how busy you are, and just thank you for everything you're doing for our city right now.
Yeah, this is so fun. This is the stuff that's like this is the fun stuff, right? I mean, earlier we were talking about emergency orders and we're talking about homelessness and all the challenges, and this is the fun. I mean, thank you, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, of course. Happy to have you, and have a great rest of your day. And thanks to everybody who joined us today.